Rain has a way of revealing the truth about people. That night, under a sky split open by thunder and pouring rain, a single broken-down car on a lonely roadside was about to change the fate of a man who had already lost almost everything. A poor single father, worn down by life and standing on the edge of judgment, slowed his old pickup when he saw two identical young women standing helplessly beside a luxury car with its hood open. He had no idea that the kindness he was about to show would walk straight into the courtroom of his own destiny. Before the story goes any further, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the quiet power of doing good when no one is watching, please like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, subscribe to the channel, and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. Your support keeps these stories alive. Ethan Walker had learned to expect nothing from the world. At 36, he was already exhausted in a way that had nothing to do with age. Life had hit him in waves that never seemed to stop coming. After his wife passed away from illness 3 years earlier, he was left alone to raise his 6-year-old son, Noah, while juggling 2 low-paying jobs. One was at a small warehouse during the day, the other as a night cleaner at a closed-down shopping complex. Sleep was a luxury, and hope felt like a distant memory. On top of everything, Ethan was fighting a legal case that threatened to take away the only thing he still lived for. A misunderstanding at work, twisted by powerful people, had put him under criminal charges, and the final court hearing was only days away. If he lost, he could lose his freedom, and Noah. That evening, Ethan was driving home after a long shift, rain hammering against the windshield, his mind heavy with fear. He was calculating bills, school fees, and legal costs when he noticed the stranded car ahead. The vehicle was expensive, completely out of place on that deserted road. 2 young women stood near it, soaked despite the umbrella they shared, fear visible in their posture. Ethan hesitated. He had every reason to keep driving. He was late, tired, and barely had enough money for gas. But something inside him refused to look away. The twins were named Lily and Grace Anderson, both 22, both students returning from a nearby city after visiting their sick aunt. The storm had caused their car to stall completely, and their phones were almost dead. The road was empty, the rain relentless, and the night growing colder by the minute. When Ethan stepped out of his truck, his jacket already worn and patched, he looked nothing like a hero. Yet there was a calm steadiness in him that made the twins feel a little safer in that terrifying moment. Ethan worked quietly, checking the engine with hands that had fixed far worse problems before. He used tools he carried from years of doing odd jobs, ignoring the rain soaking through his clothes. When he realized the car wouldn't start, he didn't walk away. Instead, he offered them shelter in his truck, shared the last of his bottled water, and made a call from his old phone to a friend who ran a small towing service. He insisted on paying part of the cost himself, even though it meant less money for the week. To Ethan, it wasn't a sacrifice worth mentioning. It was just what you did when someone needed help. As they waited, Ethan learned small pieces of their lives. They spoke about college, dreams, and the pressure of living up to expectations. Ethan didn't talk much about himself. He never mentioned the court case, the fear, or the nights he stayed awake watching his son sleep, wondering what would happen if he didn't come home one day. When the tow truck finally arrived, the twins were overwhelmed with gratitude. They tried to offer him money, but Ethan refused. He simply made sure they were safe and watched as they were taken away, rain still falling, his own problems waiting patiently for him at home. Days later, the courtroom felt colder than the stormy road ever had. Ethan sat alone at the defense table, hands clenched, heart pounding. Noah was with a neighbor, too young to understand why his father looked so scared that morning. The case against Ethan was presented harshly. Every mistake he had ever made was laid bare, painted as proof of guilt. Ethan felt smaller with every passing minute, like the world had already decided his fate. Then the judge entered. Judge Richard Anderson was known for being strict, fair, and impossible to influence. As he took his seat, the room fell silent. Ethan barely looked up at first. Judges were just another symbol of power he didn't have. But something strange happened as the hearing progressed. The judge's eyes kept returning to Ethan, not with judgment, but with recognition. A quiet tension filled the room, only later did the truth become clear. The judge was the father of Lily and Grace. That night on the roadside had not left his daughters' minds. They had gone home shaken, soaked, and deeply moved by the kindness of a stranger who had nothing to gain. They told their father everything. They spoke of Ethan's worn hands, his refusal to accept money, his concern for their safety over his own comfort. Judge Anderson listened without interruption. For the first time in a long while, he saw the world not through case files, but through the eyes of his children. In court, Judge Anderson followed the law exactly as he always did. But justice is not blind to truth. As new evidence was reviewed, evidence that had been ignored and buried, holes appeared in the accusations against Ethan. Witness statements contradicted the claims. Records were re-examined. Slowly, painfully, the story changed. When the verdict was finally delivered, Ethan felt his knees weaken. The charges were dismissed. He was free, the courtroom emptied, but Ethan remained seated, overwhelmed by relief he didn't know how to process. For the first time in years, he could breathe. Outside, rain had stopped, sunlight breaking through heavy clouds, as if the world itself was offering him a second chance. Judge Anderson watched from a distance, his face unreadable but his heart heavy with reflection. He understood then that kindness often arrives before recognition, and that the true measure of a person is revealed when no reward is promised. He ensured that Ethan was connected with legal aid, job opportunities, and support programs, not as a favor, but as what justice should look like when guided by humanity. Weeks later, Ethan stood in a small park, watching Noah laugh freely, chasing pigeons under a clear sky. Life wasn't suddenly perfect. Money was still tight. Healing was still ongoing. But hope had returned, and that changed everything. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that even the smallest act of kindness can echo in ways we may never expect, please take a moment to like, comment, and share this video. Your engagement helps spread stories that matter, and before you leave, tell us in the comments, do you believe kindness always finds its way back? Your words might inspire someone who desperately needs it today. Sometimes, the people we help in silence are the very ones holding the keys to our future, and sometimes, the greatest judgment we ever face is not in a courtroom, but in the quiet moments where we choose to be human.